This is the story of how coming out of the closet was actually the biggest gift in terms of discovering myself, living outside of societal norms, taking risks, finding my passion, but facing the shame and all of the struggles on the path to self-acceptance was massive. And it's been a long journey. But here's what I've learned. I grew up not knowing that I was queer. I was completely blind to it, which now I find amusing because reading the signs, it would have been so obvious. I think being a teenager is a confusing time for everyone. Fortunately, I have some insight because I actually kept journals throughout my teenage years. And I remember a lot of the struggle as well. I had a lot of self-doubt. I was very self-conscious. And I had a real fear of rejection. I just wanted to feel accepted. I wanted to be cool, which I think a lot of people do. And I ended up having an infatuation with my best friend. And for me, that really shrouded my sexuality. The first thing about growing up in the closet is that it was my first real experience of a blind spot. A blind spot obviously being something that you can't see and yet is present in your life. And sometimes other people can identify it, sometimes they can't, sometimes it's unconscious. But even though it's right there in front of you, you don't see it. And we all have blind spots. They lead to challenges in our relationships. They lead to a misunderstanding of ourselves. And so a huge blind spot I had growing up was that I didn't know I was gay. And it was, I suppose, my first real experience of cognitive dissonance. I could tell myself a story to explain my situation. So I told myself I didn't have a girlfriend because I was too shy to approach them. I told myself that the feelings I had for my best friend were just because I really loved being around him and that I was jealous of him and that it was just infatuation. And even as I started to explore pornography, I was able to tell myself, oh no, I'm just curious about the male body. So all of these stories that we come up with to explain our situation, and they make sense. That's cognitive dissonance. And I remember when I turned 18 and I went to university and I was in a new environment, meeting new people. And within the first couple weeks, I found myself infatuated with another man. And it was in those moments that I had the self-realization that I was gay. It just came to me. And I know this because I've kept journal entries and I was reading them recently. I was invited around to his place for drinks and I showed up within 5 minutes when he was expecting me within hours. And I was embarrassed and ashamed and I went back to my room. And I thought about why I behaved that way, and it's because I was so excited to be invited over by him to spend time with him, and I started to question those feelings and everything clicked into place. It really was an epiphany. And I had this feeling of relief. That's what it is. That's why I've been so confused. That's why I don't know myself. That's why I feel so alone. It's because I'm gay. And it felt like the missing puzzle piece. And actually, it didn't take me long to go back and tell my family, to tell my friends to come out. I didn't have a fear around it because for me it felt like resolution. But I thought that would be the end of it. And of course it isn't. Coming out of the closet isn't a one-off exchange. It felt like I had to come out of the closet over and over and over again. Especially when you're young, you don't know whether or not you're going to face discrimination, rejection, whether it's necessary to divulge your sexuality, the fear around social rejection. You know, growing up in the closet, I realize now that I was hypervigilant. I would be really conscious of my body in terms of how I move myself, how I cross my legs, how I spoke, even where I was looking. I didn't want straight boys to think that I was looking at them, so I would look away. And funnily enough, that's so programmed into me now to this day that I actively try to look people in the eyes, to be comfortable in male spaces like the gym locker room. But I still have that hypervigilance. And I remember being so afraid of being gay when I was younger. Felt like a death sentence. Because especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, there weren't really gay role models in the same way that there are now. It would have meant that the lifestyle I dreamed of having a family, of having kids, of having that normal traditional life was taken away from me. So I was afraid of it. And then obviously the hysteria around the AIDS crisis and discrimination and things like that. And being gay is different. And I know that I also have a lot of privilege within the gay community, that there's a lot of struggle and suffering that others have experienced that I was fortunate not to. But one of the things that it has really caused me to realize is that by being queer, you are on the fringes of society immediately. The traditional path of settling down with a heterosexual partner, getting married, buying a house together, having kids, that is thrown into question. And in a way, you have to work out how it is that you want your life to look. So you have actually an incredible amount of agency. You really do question societal norms because you've been rejected from them. Very often, people in the queer community find that their real sense of kinship and family come from friends, other queer allies, and this recognition that actually you can create a circle of trust, that you can find the people that see you. Whereas I think if you were born straight, if you were born in the dominant system of society, it's very hard to see what it is because you're in it. It's like sometimes we don't really understand our culture of our country until we leave. Even going on holiday and you experience different foods, different ways of working, different ways of dressing, you start to get a sense of what your culture actually is. It's the contrast that shows you who you are. And that was true for me just through my sexuality. I was in contrast to the societal norm. But there is a long and difficult journey to self-acceptance. When you're queer, you grow up internalizing a lot of hatred around your queerness. Shame, ultimately, is a feeling of rejection for who you are. Guilt is about rejection for what you've done, but shame is about rejection for who you are. The very fabric of your being feels wrong. You're told it's wrong to act a certain way. It's wrong to be attracted to a certain type of person. So your very nature is called into question. And even coming out of the closet, it's not this immediate relief from that. There's this fantastic book called The Velvet Rage, which is by a gay psychologist, and he explains the journey that a lot of homosexuals go on. And it's broken into 3 stages. And when I read it, I couldn't believe how much of my life followed this storyline. It made me realize that there are some very common storylines that we all follow and we're not aware of it. We think our journeys are unique. But in this story arc, you go through this process of internalized shame and homophobia, of being in the closet. And so when you finally come out in the second stage, there is this sense of openness and expansion, excitement. You're meeting other gay men, you're exploring your sexuality, you feel accepted in those communities. But there can be this real drive for external validation because we feel this sense of shame. We don't know how to validate ourselves. So a lot of gay men can be caught up in seeking success in their career. They can be very caught up in seeking approval from their gay peers, their gay friends. We can attach ourselves to a new form of culture, even if it doesn't actually resonate with us completely, because we just want that community acceptance. And so a lot of people get stuck in this second stage. But there is a third stage, which is self-actualization. And very often it's brought on by some sort of collapse. For me, it was a breakup of a relationship after 4 years, a crisis moment where everything is thrown into question. And I had to go through this process of piecing back together my life and questioning, who is it that I am fundamentally? And having the support of a therapist to act as a mirror in that process was incredibly healing and helpful. And I realized that this shame of who I was deep. Really, really deep. Because even though you're out of the closet, it's there lurking within you. It's yet again another blind spot. And so in this third stage, it's all about seeking out your true calling, your true authentic life. Who are you? Without all of the bells and whistles of culture and society around you. Fundamentally, who is it? What do you value? And I've been on this journey for the last 4 years or so, exploring that question. Breaking myself apart, exploring my polarities. And what I've found is that engaging in the areas where there's the greatest resistance is where I've had the most growth. It's exploring these polarities, the shadow part of me, the side that I've rejected. Right now, that means taking up more space. It's embodying someone who is more willing to share their voice because I've kept myself small for so long. It's also meant learning to validate myself, to detach myself from the opinions of other people. And that's meant changing so much in my life. It's meant moving countries. It's meant quitting my job. It's meant exploring new interests and hobbies just by following my curiosity, even though it's strange and weird. For me, it's about being okay with being weird. That was a term that I used to hate. For someone to call me weird, oof, I didn't want to be an outcast. But now I embrace it. I love my weirdness, but the biggest transformation of all has just come from the way that I talk to myself. Because what I've learned is that I'm the one who has to live with myself for eternity. And do I want to have an internal voice that acts like an inner critic, judging me, shaming me, telling me that what I'm doing is wrong, being afraid of other people's opinions? Or do I want an internal voice that acts as a cheerleader, warm and comforting and encouraging me when I'm taking risks, telling me that it's okay when I make mistakes, being there to support myself as I access a more authentic life and take more risks? So I feel blessed to have gone on this journey. I feel so blessed to have experienced life on the fringes of normal society, to force me to question the life path that I'm on, to make a decision in terms of who it is that I want to be surrounded with, who it is that I want to be. That I've gone through this process of exploring shame, of understanding discrimination and having a deeper empathy towards others who face discrimination on an even more profound level. It is a blessing. And I think it's true of all of our supposed wounds or flaws. They actually lead the way to our healing, and they eventually become our gifts. So that's my story. If you enjoyed that, or found it useful, please do share it, please do like it, please do comment and follow. And let me know in the comments below your own experience with your own queerness, whether that's in terms of your sexuality, whether that's in terms of just being queer outside of societal norms. I would love to hear. So thank you.